started, thank you very much for joining the session. I have to say that this has been a long work and many people have been involved in it. It started even before I arrived at TU Delft in 2019, and then the last 2 years we gave a hard push to get the software policy published. It's a collaborative effort between ICT, the library, and Valorization Center, plus a lot of researchers that provided feedback also on the policy. So, oh, sorry. So first, why to prepare a policy about software? We have a research data management framework policy. Each faculty has a research data policy as well. But why to have a software policy? And there are mainly 3 reasons. First, software is increasingly recognized as a research output. And I don't know why I can't change the slides. And so it is known that around 92% of academics use research software for data analysis, for workflows to work with data, or also research software could be a research output itself. And also, TU Delft is working on a new strategy for rewards and recognitions of researcher, and a policy also should facilitate that contribution of TU Delft researchers to open source software is acknowledged and rewarded. Also, the second reason is that as relevant research output, software should be properly managed to avoid loss of access when researchers leave TU Delft. For example, when a PhD student finishes the PhD thesis, people need to continue working with the software, and if it's properly managed, that can happen. Software should be well documented to allow reusability and the continuity of the research. And whenever possible, software should be fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. There is a big discussion about the application of the FAIR principles to software. So this is ongoing, but at least make research software findable and reusable should be considered as best practices when creating software. And the third reason, and I think maybe this was the main initial driver, is that the procedure to make software openly available was very labor intensive and a lengthy process. And that is because software falls under copyright law. So that means that TU Delft is the owner of the software created by researchers employed at the university. And that means that TU Delft is the one deciding which software can be made openly available and how this will be done. So before the policy was there, researchers should submit an invention disclosure form, an IDF. And after evaluation by the Valorization Center, a decision was made and researchers could publish the software. This process was not very strict, so Valorization Center was not really on researchers checking this, but actually not doing this or not following this procedure would be actually breaking the copyright law. So there was the need to have and establish an easy system that allow researchers to publish their software. So to overcome those main reasons, the software policy intends to set out high-level requirements for how software should be managed, following best practices, establishes the responsibilities of the various stakeholders involved in research development, and provide clarifications on copyright on software at TU Delft. Also describes the workflow for sharing software openly, and that gives researchers more freedom to publish open source software if they want to. And The establishment of this workflow also allows the inclusion of software as a valuable research output in the future rewards and recognition system. A note, the policy does not force researchers to make the software openly available, but as I said, it tries to facilitate the process of making it openly available. The policy is also accompanied with guidelines. The guidelines are called on research software licensing, registration, and commercialization at TU Delft. And of course, this tries to clarify some points from the software itself. For example, provides a more detailed description of the workflow involved when sharing software under an open or proprietary license. Elaborate on relevant considerations when making software available to others, and also provides detailed description of open source licenses pre-approved by TU Delft, and provides also additional references. So in general, what is the proposed workflow? So for publishing software as open source where possible and appropriate, researchers at TU Delft should consider to evaluate the possibility of commercial exploitation. So you need to think about, okay, am I creating software that I want to exploit commercially, or is this software that is supporting my research, my findings, and is relevant for reproducibility of the research? You should also consider the risk of intellectual property rights infringement, and this is related when you are reusing code from somebody else. You need to be aware under which license the software is to know if you really can build upon it and make your part of the software openly available. And you should also use one of the TU Delft pre-approved open source licenses, make the software openly available, of course, and comply with TU Delft requirements regarding software registration. We will go a bit more into detail in each of these points. So, but in principle, when following this workflow, TU Delft is automatically transferring to you the copyright on the research software. So you can make the software openly available without any further paperwork. So the IDF is not in place anymore for open source software. And of course, this workflow helps you to maximize the impact of your research, contributing to the open source community, open source software community. So let's go a bit more in detail about the workflow. The first step is to know if you can really apply an open source software license to your project. And we have created a kind of decision tree that we hope help researchers to do a pre-assessment on if they can or not make the software openly available. So these are 5 main questions that could have a yes or no answer. So for example, is the work directly funded by the university? If not, who is funding this work? Are there commercial partners, for example? If yes, if the project is funded by the university, are there any other legal restrictions that you need to consider? For example, are there contracts with industry partners? Are there any issues with export control regarding legislation? If there are, you should contact the data stewards for guidance. Question number 3, did you link to include or use lines of codes from others? And this is what I was talking about before. So if you are reusing code, are you sure that you are allowed to use the code in a compatible manner as you are planning to? So for example, you build upon a software and then you want to open the software with a specific license, but maybe the software you are reusing has a license that is not compatible with the license you want to use. So if you are sure that you can use the software, then you can proceed and ask the next question. Oh, and I wanted to tell you that also in the guidelines, we also have a nice table where we talk about compatibility of licenses. So here you can see, for example, if you publish your software as with the MIT is compatible with many other licenses available for open source software, but then there are other licenses like TPL that start to be more restrictive on compatibility of licenses. So if you have determined that you are sure that you are allowed to use the software you want to build upon, then you should ask yourself, do you wish to commercially exploit this software, or you want to provide consultancy services of the software you are creating? Um, so if the answer is yes, then you need to ask yourself, is the software presenting a novel technical solution? If yes, then you need to go to the commercial path of software that in that case, you will need to fill an invention disclosure forms and contact valorization center and so on. But if you do not wish to commercially exploit your software, then you need to ask yourself, will you publicly publish under a pre-approved open source software licenses? If you don't want to use one of the pre-approved licenses by TU Delft, please contact your data steward to discuss this. We have provided a list of pre-approved licenses, but it doesn't mean that other license will not be accepted, but then there should be a conversation with the data steward and probably valorization center. If you are ready answering all your questions and the last question is yes, then you should have the software register, and please always remember to acknowledge funding or support of TU Delft or collaborators that contributed to the software. The step number 2, once you have clear that you can publish your software or make it openly available, you need to make notice that TU Delft is transferring the copyright to you. And that is done simply by adding a copyright waiver of TU Delft. And in the guidelines, we provide a text, a template text that you can use, saying that the university disclaim all the copyright interest. You need to add the name of the software or one line of description of what the software does, and written by who, so the authors, the name of the dean of your faculty. Yeah, that's it. And you also need to assert your own personal copyright. So you need to inform that TU Delft has waived all the rights and that you are claiming the copyright, and that will allow you to add a license of your choice to your software of your choice, and that is pre-approved by TU Delft. You can add this information, for example, in the README file or the documentation of the code or software or project, for example. So you can just copy this template text and add it to the documentation of the software. And then after you have done that, you can apply one of the TU Delft pre-approved open source software licenses. And we have listed 7 pre-approved licenses. Some of them are more permissive licenses and others a bit more restrictive. As we say, it has to do more with compatibility between software licenses, but you can find detailed information about these 7 licenses in the guidelines as well. We also have included CC0, although it's not a commonly used license for software. What we mean here is that instead of not adding anything, it's better, and you want to make it really open, it's better to add a public domain mark. And that could be the CC0 sign, let's say, image. to indicate that it's public domain. You can also check the unlicensed, which has the equivalent to public domain, and that is used with software. And as I said, you find more information about all these licenses, the pros and cons, comparisons between them, compatibility comparison between them in the guidelines, and more generic information about more licenses. You can go to this website, choosealicense.com, where there is an extensive list of different licenses. Remember that you could choose a not pre-approved license, but then you need to talk to your data steward that will probably have the approval by the valorization center or have a talk with the valorization center. The step 4, make the software openly available. So TU Delft is willing to give you the copyright, to waive the copyright to you, but you need to make the software openly available. That is the idea. So how you could do that? So if I think of the most common workflows with software, people use GitHub or GitLab to set up their projects, a repository, because it also is a commonly used tool for versioning of software. By the way, TU Delft provide a GitLab instance where you can create private projects, but later on you can make them public as well. Once you are done with your project, you can make the software available also through the GitLab instance of TU Delft. So you can make the software openly available there. Remember what the steps, the previous steps, adding to the documentation, the waiver of copyright, adding the license to the software, etc. But it is very recommended to publish actually your GitHub or GitHub repository in a data or code repository. For example, for TU Research Data, which is the repository of TU Delft and the technical universities in the Netherlands, or Zenodo, which is a European instance of a data repository. What is the advantage of that? Is that you can assign a DOI, a persistent identifier, to your repository, software repository, code repository, which helps to make it findable and also, more importantly, citable. And there are also some software-specific repository archives you could explore if you are interested. One example is the software heritage. And the last step, step 5, is register the software. So why this is important? Because software registration allows you to make visible your contributions to open source software to the management of TU Delft. And software registration allows TU Delft also to be able to integrate research software as a valuable research output as part of the future reward system. And the registration of research outputs in general, publications, software and data, data and software is now incorporated also, is done in Pure, which is a repository system that is set up by the library and managed by the library. Every employee of TU Delft has access to their own Pure profile where you can add, register the software. But I will talk in detail how to do that later on. But there are 2 ways to register the software. So if you publish, for example, the software on 4TU Research Data Repository, the library will automatically register the software in Pure. So we will take care that what is published on 4TU Research Data, it will be transferred automatically to Pure. But if you publish in another repository, which is also okay, for example, in Zenodo or other software-specific repository, it is your responsibility as a researcher, as the creator of the software, to register the software in Pure. How to get help and guidance on what we have talked so far. So first of all, each employee is responsible to seek advice from the support staff when in doubt about this procedure. The faculty data stewards can advise researchers on how to manage, store, preserve data and code in accordance to internal guidance of TU Delft. And the faculty data steward should be the first point of contact for the software developers, researchers, and staff when dealing with software-related questions. That was decided because it's easy to have one reference point to ask questions, and data and software are so closely related that it was decided that the faculty data steward should be the first point of contact. I hope you all know that there is one data steward per faculty. There is a website where you can find the contacts of them, and they will be happy to help you with any questions. But there are other relevant support roles here. So as I said, the first contact point are the faculty data stewards. But if they cannot help because the question involves legal issues or any difficult question, they will contact the contract managers and get them involved in the request of help. Faculty contract managers help in general with software commercialization, collaborations with industrial partners, so setting up the agreements, collaboration agreements, and they, depending on the faculty, they also know a lot about software licensing. If this is a very complicated question, then a valorization center will be involved. And valorization center take care of IPR and IP section of licenses, collaboration agreements also with industry partners. But in principle, contract managers are also able to answer those kind of questions. And then if the question or it involves legal matters, if the case is out the normal TU Delft procedures, then the legal affairs will get involved as well. But for you as a researcher, so you need to know that you have this network that can help you out. But for you, it's important to know that you should contact the data steward on the first place to get started getting support. I would like to stop here to answer some questions, and then what I will do after this short Q&A session is to explain how you can publish software on 4TU research data and how you can register software in Pure. So I will stop sharing my screen for now. And
I will actually also pause the recording for the time of questions.
I think maybe that's nice because then people maybe is less shy to open the mics and the cameras, so we can have a more like a dialogue, and then we reassume the recording.
Started.
Perfect. So the last part, and it's very shortly, but also I thought it would be good to show you how to publish software on research data. First of all, so you need to go to the 4TU website. This is the URL for the website, and you can log in directly using TU Delft credentials. You need to select Delft University of Technology from the list that will appear there when you say, I want to sign up with my institutional credentials. Then you sign in and you are directed to your own page or your own working space on 4TU research data. So there you can see, that you can drag files, for example, if you are working with data, but here you also see the icons of GitHub. So you can directly import a repository that you have on GitHub on 4TU. So, and also good news, very soon, hopefully June, July, there should be also an integration with GitLab. So either you use GitHub or GitLab, you will be easily be able to upload is kind of a screenshot of the code. So when you select, you can select the repository that you want to make publicly available. So the first time that you click on the GitLab, GitHub icon, they will ask you to synchronize 4TU research data with your repository, with your GitHub account or GitLab account. And then you will have a menu of all the repositories you have. And then you can select which one is the one you want to import into 4TU. Then you can add relevant metadata on 4TU about your research. For example, you can add the title is imported directly as is called in your GitHub repository. You can add authors, of course. The item type is automatically selected as software. You can add discipline categories in here where it says categories. Other important metadata, you should add a description of your software. Probably you have one already in your GitHub repo, so you can copy the README that you have in there. You can add the funder if this is a funded project. And then here, for example, this is very nice also from this integration that as reference, it will be automatically imported the URL of your GitHub repository. So not only you have a description of your code on 4TU, you have metadata associated to it, you have a DOI, you can provide a license and give a machine readable license to your software. And then you get a persistent identifier that makes it citable. You can save the changes if you are not ready to publish and continue later on, or you can click on publish, and then the item will go to our back office that will accept the publication of the code. And that you are done, because doing this, the registration in Pure is automatically done by TU Delft Library. Now, if you don't want to publish your code on 4TU and you just want to keep it on GitHub and you don't want to get a persistent identifier for your code, but then it's not citable, you can do that. You can use other repositories also to publish the code, like Zenodo, for example. Some researchers have done that already at TU Delft. Then it's your responsibility to register the software in Pure. So how we do this? As I said, every employee has access to a Pure page. So you go to the URL, you log in with your TU Delft credentials again, and then you are in your own space in Pure. You have different options here on the left side of things that you can do, but not all of them are active actually. But there is this section here, is called Datasets and Software. And if you click in there, you have two options. You should go to the software option, and then you end up in a page also where you need to add metadata, a title, description, any bibliographical note you need to add. You can specify the date of production or if this was done in a period of time. You can add also authors here. So here is the creator is considered the person that is the owner of the Pure account, but you can add you can add people here in this icon with the plus. You can add more contributors. It could be from TU Delft or it could be external people. And then important to fill in Pure is, for example, if you have published the code, the software on Zenodo, you can change here the publisher name and state it that is publicly available on Zenodo. You should, if it's in a repository and you have a DOI, please add the DOI in here. Well, probably you have the code on GitHub or GitLab, so please add the link to the repository in here, so you can add the URL, and you can add here the date when you are making or when you made the software openly available. So these are the relevant information you need to fill in Pure. Oh yeah, I sent it. So add the name of the repository where the software is published if you have published it somewhere else. Add the DOI provided by the repository if available. I forgot I had this. And add the link to the GitLab repository in here. And then also you will need to state the license of the software. So the license you choose, you can if you go here at software license, it will appear a list of the pre-approved licenses by TU Delft. And then another thing, if, for example, this is related to another research output, you can check here, for example, I don't know, if this is connected to a data set or a project, you can add the project information. And then you save it and automatically go for validation by the library. But as soon as you save it, the metadata will be available on Pure publicly. So there is no revision review process when you register in Pure. There is a short review process when you publish on 4TU research data. Yeah, so once you save it, the software will be registered and the metadata will be publicly available. And that's it, how you can, first of all, publish software on 4TU. Is very easy because it is integrated with GitHub, very soon with GitLab, and then you are done. Or you need to register it in Pure, as I showed, filling in also some information about the software. And that's all what I would like to say. So maybe there are questions about this last part. And maybe we could also stop the recording again, Marta, before we take the questions.